So before we dive further into the RBD setup, I wanted to show an alternative version on how we could fracture the ground. And I've quickly prototyped the idea and I wanted to show it to you guys. So at this point, if you wanted to go back and change the ground or try this method, you're more than welcome to do so. So let's take a quick look. The first thing that I started exploring with is the RBD fracture material, and this is something they introduced in Houdini 17.5, and they kept improving. It relies on using the Boolean under the hood, and it works great when you have simple geometry or flat planes, which is basically the same behavior that you would get from the Boolean operation. The only thing is I personally don't use it because it's quite slow, and it could get the same result using a much faster method, mainly using the Voronoi. And the option they have a glass type of material that you could use. So here I have the grid, just 5 subdivision on each axis, and I have a point at the center of the grid. With the RBD fracture, if we set it to glass and then tell the impact points to not scatter anything and use our input points, we can tell it where to create the fracture, where the glass impact is going to be. And this has a radial pattern that we could explore, so we can lower the crack numbers or increase them, and we could change the distance between the cracks, and the spread is how much gap between the slices we have. And we also could add noise to the cracks so they are more uniform, but overall I don't think it's intuitive for what we wanted to do. So I'm not gonna use this. I don't think it has the options and the controls that we need. The other way is to create our own pattern, our own circular or ripple effect, and use that to define the blocks. And this is the more artistic approach. So the way I've done it is using the same grid, I've created a circle like we did before. I used the carve to only get the outer shell. I don't need the surface inside, and then used a copy. Now the nice thing of this behavior is that we get a realistic ripple separation, because that's what happens. And we can decide to start off with a smaller, just copy this. So if we wanted to start off with something smaller and then increase it like that, and let me template the grid, we can have very quick variations and still get the gaps that we want. We can lower the number of repetition, increase this, and it's really easy to get this nice propagating circles. So that's how I've done it. I created circles, and then I separated the center. I grouped everything except these circles in the center. The more correct way is to use a ramp to blend in, but basically I wanted to add noise to the outer circle and keep the center safe. But again, the easiest way is to use a ramp from the center all the way to the edge here, and use that to drive the noise. And then I extruded this. Okay, and then from here I transformed it down so it intersects with the grid. So the grid is in the center. And actually, let's reduce it down, scale it down like that. And then using a Boolean fracture node, make sure it's set to surface. So the way we create that is using a Boolean fracture node, which is a Boolean node. It's set up to create an interior and exterior faces, an outside face, like the Voronoi does, and it's ready for it's designed for destruction. The only thing is we have to tell it to treat it as a surface, otherwise it's not gonna give us the result that we want. And you can see we have now pieces, blocks here. We don't need the 5x5 blocks, so we could get a continuous piece. And let me lower this to 2x2. So now we have better geometry, and this is a nice base to start working with. Now what we could do is we could loop over each block separately. I'll explain why I did the divide So let me disable all this. So what we could do is we could use a connectivity and loop over each piece, scatter some points, and then use an RBD fracture or a Voronoi fracture, it doesn't really matter, and then run over all the pieces and take a look at the result. So this is what we have, and this is with the color, and you can see we're getting these circles and they're fractured and they're themselves fractured, and we could scatter the points in any way we want. The only thing I did is I wanted to have a clean mesh. So with the Voronoi, all this is n-gons. I don't like to work with n-gons, especially when we're gonna pass it into the Voronoi or the Boolean. So first I stored the rest, and then I used the divide node to convert it into triangles, and then I added some noise to it. And the idea here, I'm going to add some more details. The idea here is I wanted to add more details, add some noise to the entire geometry, and then restore it back. Do my fracture and then restore it back so that I get some edge details inside. And I'm restoring the rest back, and this is my geometry. There's a little bit of intersection here, but I think we have to tweak the noise and improve the input geometry. That's it. This is one approach, and you can work on these. We still have the information about these clusters, so we could change the settings of the RBD sim based on those and make the glue or the constraint network different on each one. For example, the strength is different, the center is weaker, and the outer are stronger, so we get these blocks contained. And it actually would be really nice to see these patterns of the clusters like I did here. These are all from the sim. Let's put down a transform pieces. This is not the geometry. 1 second. I had to restart Houdini, that's why. So let's see. I'm gonna import the RBD geometry and deform it. So here we still have some nice separation, but this is all coming from the glue clusters, and the constraints is not coming from the actual fracturing pattern. We fractured it uniformly, and this is the separation I was talking about. You can see here, this is a block, this is a block, but if we had it embedded in the geometry, we would be certain that we would get the fractures that we want. So if you want to go into specific details that you want, this is the way to go. You have full control over the patterns here, and you can do whatever you want. Okay, so that's it. You can choose whichever method you want and explore other methods. As long as you have an initial base with interesting details, we should be able to get some really nice crumbling effects from the next videos. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.